Welcome, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to episode 3 of the Winners in Business podcast, sponsored by Beachfront Custom Development and Impact Business Marketing. Our guest today is Fred Solar, CRO at Simulus AI and Managing Principal at Bigwheel Performance. He's worked at a number of esteemed organizations in the past, including Oracle and SAP, held several executive positions, built high-performing teams at a number of organizations, and continues his work as a fractional CRO and go-to-market consultant. Today, we'll talk about some of his career-defining wins, the critical success factors for assembling and engaging high-performance go-to-market teams, and the exciting work he's leading at Simulus AI. Let's jump in. Well, Fred, thanks for hopping on the show today. I just gave our listeners a rundown of who you are and a bit about your background, but I'd love to hear about your journey in your own words, so why don't you take it away?
Well, Andrew, it's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate you having me on the show. I was an accounting major, and I got started, though, in sales right out of school. Selling copiers. And it was a great way to learn the basics. You know, I could still remember attention, interest, conviction, desire, and close, the basics of the sales cycle that I still teach today, if you will. I did have a brief stint at Merrill Lynch during a great period of time, 1999 to 2002, and which was the dot-com bomb era, and the Enron collapse, Deltacom, you know.
Like buying houses in 07 or something.
Yeah, and then, of course, you had 9/11, which was not a great time to be a financial advisor and try to build a book of business. I got a call from a friend of a friend, if you will, that I worked with in the copier business, and they were looking to find a leader to jumpstart a new product line for their organization. And next thing you know, I did that for the next 6 years. That was about the time we started getting into software. We document them, Legato, Kofax, all of these scanning, retrieval, workflow management. And then I realized that was kind of the ticket that was the up and coming technology that we all wanted to be a part of. And so I had a friend who I'd met who brought me onto a company called Knowledgeant at the time. Now they've rebranded since then and become Intradium. Did that for a few years, ran global sales for them. And this was back probably '08, I guess, when e-commerce was a big thing and people were now buying online, and Amazon was probably still selling books at the time. But I went to work for a company called ATG, Art Technology Group, doing e-commerce. It was fantastic. We had a great run, and we did an exit to Oracle, and I lasted about a year at Oracle. It was a much different mindset and mentality from ATG to Oracle. Great company Oracle is, but it's just different. And so a lot of the folks from ATG who went to Oracle then went over to Hybris, which was another independent commerce company. And so I went over there to lead the East. Sure enough, we get bought by SAP, and I'm like, holy crap, here we go again. You know, the small independent company now gets gobbled up by the big tech giant. And I'm going to be looking for a new opportunity in the next year. And I stayed 7 years total, and reopened up my consulting company. And now I work as a fractional chief revenue officer and strategic advisor for a number of companies, including some advisory businesses, implementers, technologists, and even an AI startup. So, and you know, my goal in life at this point is to help the future leaders and future generations not make the same mistakes I made.
Well, that's one heck of a journey. Speaking of tech, you know, when you've, as a fractional consultant, fractional CRO and a consultant, you've helped bring tech products to market. Now, with a sales background, I know that sales will teach you to fire on all cylinders, think outside the box. But where did you develop the skills for things like, I mean, here's our development team, here's how big it is, here are our goals, like, do we need to seek outside help? Do we need to find more people? How do you learn to fire on all cylinders in order to truly bring a tech product to market?
You can't do it by yourself, right? So I think that the biggest thing that I would say to people is to network and learn and leverage others, right? And I've seen this firsthand in my business today, and with many who are still considered successful entrepreneurs, CEOs. They tend to reach this growth plateau, and they struggle to go further because they're only they only have so much knowledge in their skill set, and they're afraid to empower or delegate to others. So you need to find somebody that you can trust and leverage. And again, I typically see it a lot with first-time founders and CEOs. They've built these tech companies and these organizations in a certain manner based on their skill set and their understanding and knowledge, and they get to a certain level, and then they don't go any further because they don't know how to unlock what revenue operations means. And so they don't trust that sales and marketing is incredibly important in your organization, or they don't trust finance, right? What's also allowed me to, I would say, become more skilled in many situations and examples is I understand the metrics, I understand the finances, I understand, that numbers and that matter. Being able to communicate with people is critically important, and it's been helpful to me as well. And a lot of these CEOs and founders aren't great communicators in that regard, right? It's just part of it. And they've grown overnight and they didn't put the infrastructure in place. And then they've reached this plateau, right, and they don't have anybody they can trust to come in there and help them. And so I look at it and say, you have to have somebody you can bounce ideas off of, that you can leverage to complement your skills. I'm not saying I'm necessarily great in sales and marketing, but I'm pretty darn good. I've got a lot of experience. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've forgotten a lot of things, but I still know a lot on how to drive and scale businesses. From a technology side, that's not my forte, right? So how do I learn? How do I grow? I bring in somebody that I can learn and grow from on that side of the business that helps me. And I think too many people, again, they're scared of that vulnerability. They're scared of that. I don't have all the answers, so I don't want to look stupid. Mm-hmm. I have zero problem going into a room and saying, "Hey, I'm the dumbest person in this room." And I'm being a little facetious, but it's true. If you're talking technology, no, I'm not the smart person in the room, right? But if you want to talk about solving business problems and shareholder value and opportunities to finance the business in a certain manner and creating go-to-market strategy, that's where I'm great at. And I guarantee you those people probably don't have that acumen.
Given that you've been around the block with Oracle and SAP and you got into those organizations because they acquired smaller companies you were with, right? So Fred, you're saying that you need to find that trusted lieutenant, and having worked with so many organizations that are trying to scale up and go to market with their tech products, how do you know when you have looked enough for that trusted lieutenant and maybe you need to look externally for some resources?
First of all, I think with trust in somebody, you can solve a lot of challenges together. If there's a trust factor that you have. So if you're looking internally and you really, really do trust somebody, they may make a good lieutenant. They may never be the guy or the woman, if you will. But I mean, I think you have to look at your business as a whole as to, what's working and what's not working, and then determine, do you have the right people in-house to do that? Meaning, do they have the skill set? Do they have the ability to take the lessons and the understanding? And there's a lot of companies that don't, right? I mean, there's stagnant growth for a reason. There's a bad go-to-market. I just had a conversation with a CEO who just took over, a new company. It's $70 million in revenue. And he said, we got an incredible product, but our go-to-market's all screwed up. And that's where I need some help. Right. And he doesn't have, and he's looked around and he doesn't feel confident or have the trust that he has somebody in there already to be able to fix it. So, I would say that it's really a case by case scenario, but if you've got stagnant growth, if you've got a growth plateau, if you have somebody who's just tactically focused and focused on the urgent, you may want to look at somebody who's a little bit more experienced with creating strategy and execution around how to go to the next level. They look at it and go, why do I need to pay this CRO all of this money to come in and do this? We've got people who've been here for years who know what they're doing, because this person brings in a different capability and experience and skill set. But it also goes beyond that. And I don't mean to run on here, but it goes beyond just the idea. It also goes to the execution and the leadership too. Mm-hmm. So not only can would you need to bring somebody in to enact that change and create that infrastructure, but you need to give them the ability to do it, the resources to do it, and the support to do it. There's too many times, you bring in somebody, and I think this is what I could probably name a couple of organizations that I've had experiences with where they've paid me a lot of money to come in, but then it's like I'm doing it myself, and as good as I am, I can't do it alone, and I need the support, the resources. I need the support and the direction of leadership and the encouragement of leadership that, hey, we've gotten to a certain point. Here's our vision for the future, and these are the changes that will drive us towards the future. But here's the benefit to you as well. Again, that's the communication factor. And too many times they'll say, "Oh, we brought in so and so. He's the new Superman or the superhero or Superwoman or whatever. They're gonna fix all the ills, right? And they're gonna get us to the next level." And then they don't have the support. They don't have the ability to be successful. And there's a lot of great people in the business community that have faltered as a result of that, myself included.
I'd love to bring this around actually to a company that you're working with right now. And I believe you are the chief revenue officer there. That's Simulus AI. I pretty much fell out of my seat when I first saw that. For any of our listeners who don't know, Simulus AI, well, actually, why don't I let you give them a rundown, because the thing that made me fall out of my seat was the fact that, you can have a digital twin that starts speaking to you in German. I was like, there's no way that wasn't Fred speaking before. But could you tell our listeners a little bit about Simulus AI, the clients that you serve, and really what makes you guys unique?
Sure. So Simulus AI is we're leveraging digital twin technology. Most people refer to as avatars. So we're blending leading AI avatar technology and our creative methodology. So our CEO and founder has been in the digital agency space for 30 years. And a couple of years ago, they started using Unreal Engine to really drive effectiveness, rapid development through Unreal Engine and other AI capabilities. And then when we came out with the generative AI avatar technology recently in the last year, they've taken that to the next level. So, they're using the twins, if you will, that we're able to create at a much higher quality than a lot of these tech platforms out there. We're blending that creative and digital agency experience with the technology to create a higher quality, and then be able to use that for rapid content creation and distribution, brand preservation, multi-language capability, market expansion. Really, the use cases and the opportunities are limitless and span, objectives, industries, and audiences. Traditional content. Why aren't people putting out more content? Well, first of all, most of us, 92%, have a 92% better adoption of videos, right? So there's a reason YouTube's multi-billion-dollar business. There's a reason that Instagram and all these other social platforms, TikTok you mentioned earlier, and because the video presentation is so much better at reaching an audience. Mm-hmm. But why is it not done more frequently in organizations today?
It's because if it's good, but even if it's not great, it's still better than a white paper that's great that provides.
I
see what you mean. Yeah,
little visual impact, right? You could have there's a lot of Harvard Business Reviews and New England Medical Journal of Medicine or whatever that I've never read, because it's like 35 pages of like it's incredible research and information, but it's not presented in a way that I can easily digest it, right? Mm-hmm. So here's an opportunity now to create unlimited content. You can do it in days, not months. You film one time, you can produce all these different videos, whether it's communications, training, sales and marketing, presentations, social posts, product explainer videos. And you can get that content out faster, and you can get it absorbed and directed and engaging an audience quicker and better. And because of Simulus AI's capabilities, there's a higher quality and consistency. So I'll give you an example of where I see another example that people don't quite recognize, and that is you've got a product owner, and they understand the product and what they've built, and they may go teach somebody else. Well, in that lesson, there's a drop off of what was taught to them, right? And so it's like the operator game, if you will. Like there may be 5 things that get taught, and then all of a sudden the person who just learned only knows 4 things, and then they teach somebody else and they only know 3 things. But now you have this consistent messaging, and it's told the right way every time as well, and it's consistent, uniform, and it's high quality. And we haven't even talked about cost yet, right? So, right. Again, the limiters in producing content, resources, which is time and cost, right? People, time, cost. And this solves a lot of that problem. It solves huge, tremendous challenges. It's 50 to 60% less to produce. And it allows a massive reduction of resources needed to produce content. You don't have to go to a studio now every time. You don't have to go and if you use Simulus services, you don't need editing capabilities. You just basically send a script and say, hey, I want my twin to do X, Y, and Z, and I want it in this language. We haven't even talked about languages. I know. Which is the sexiness to start, right? The sexiness of the languages. Now I can speak in over 70, 100 languages just by flipping a script. And so if you're talking about trying to reach an audience and you're trying to educate and you're trying to get adoption, you're trying to get engagement, speaking to somebody in their native language is so much better than forcing everybody to try to learn English. Mm-hmm. And, it's amazing in this world that, we've grown up with the fact that we speak English as our first language. We go over to Italy and a lot of people speaking English there. You go to France, people speak English. I was in Croatia, and in Croatia, when they're in elementary school, they learn English. That's required, right? We take that for granted in a lot of cases. It's easier for somebody to learn and grow and develop and create a better messaging in Croatian or Italian or German or you name it. It's huge impact.
I mean, this is kind of mind-blowing. And for any of our listeners who haven't seen this, I'm going to include a link in the show notes because the applications are so wide-ranging. But, business strategy is about trade-offs, figuring out who do I serve, who do I not serve? And going to market with a tech product, that means finding a customer and serving them well. And I know that you have experience on that side too. Let's narrow down our customer and then build that product for that purpose. So how do you find that ideal customer? Who are you serving right now? Who is the best customer, and who should be on the lookout for what Simulus AI is doing?
Well, that's a great question. And the reality is we have hundreds of use cases that could benefit from it, but I'll give you the number one use case is learning and development. It's communications, training, learning and development. It's enabling and empowering our people to grow and be better. And there are huge companies that have huge needs for training, and they're not trained. People aren't trained enough because, again, it takes time to produce that content. Oh, and by the way, 6 months after now, it's taken me 6 months to produce this, and now we've come up with 5 different features in our product, and that's not in there. And so we have to amend that or append that or whatever it is. And again, it's not not instantaneous, and it takes time. It's cumbersome. I've got there's a great one is learning and development, and another example of that is a friend who works with us at Simulus. She ran global enablement for Concur, SAP Concur, and I've known her for many, many years. And she came up with this, and this happens every day. We talk to people. It's like, hey, we just acquired a company in Japan, and they've got 2,000 employees now we need to speak to and communicate with and train, and it's all in English. So we went and hired this guy to translate all of our content, and it took 14 months to translate it over to Japanese. 14 months just to translate, right? And what happens in 14 months? That product's got 12 different renditions. It's changed, it's developed, and quite frankly, you have no idea if the Japanese is actually correct or not, right? Because she didn't speak Japanese, so she does no quality check in the process. So it solves massive problems like that. Or you can go and pay a translation service thousands of dollars to turn it around. But that doesn't mean it's edited correctly. It's usually just subtitled, which again has challenges around that. So again, I don't want to belabor, but learning and development communications is an excellent opportunity. A competitor, I guess, I've never seen them, but I'll give you an example, is they just ran a couple of full-page HBR on the back of Harvard Business Review for CEOs. CEOs need to communicate with their organization. Communicating is better than not. Negativity creeps into the void of communication is what I like to say. And if you're not communicating with your teams and your people, they think the worst in a lot of cases, right? The mind starts to gravitate towards a negative, something's wrong with the company, we're not doing well. They hear like the rumblings of the economy's horrible. The company could be going gangbusters, but if they don't hear anything, they're thinking the worst. It's somewhat human nature. So being a CEO is busy. Right? They can't just keep going into a studio week in, week out to communicate with people, and nor do they speak 10 different languages. So this is an opportunity for CEO to film one time, have a digital twin, and then be able to communicate effectively and globally and reach their audience in real time. So, then you bring up the authenticity aspect of it. Is it authentic? Is your concern that it's not as authentic? Sure, but you can communicate that effectively, and being able to communicate more than not is still better than not at all.
Now, when you say authentic, if it does differ, how does it differ from realistic?
Well, I mean, so this is live, right? So we're going to have challenges. We're going to have errors that, you're going to have motions that, and I'm going to say things that probably I wouldn't say if I could perfect it. And so this is real time. That being said, if you're creating a canned script that's read through AI, people will say, well, that's inauthentic. That's not them. Like me wishing Andrew Rosenblum a happy birthday on his birthday because my twin puts out a message to you. Are you going to be like, oh, horrible. I can't believe they did that. That's inauthentic. Or you're going to be like, oh, that's pretty cool. They sent me a birthday message. Right? I'd rather say it's pretty cool that they thought they made enough effort to send me a birthday message, whether it was the CEO or whether it was his twin. To me, it's just it's an opportunity to communicate. But some people who object to AI and all this are concerned more about are concerned about authenticity. And we could spend a whole hour talking about filming and is it authentic, and editing that goes into it and things of that nature. So to me, it's more about being able to communicate again faster, more regularly, and in language that my audience would like to receive it in.
Now, this gets me thinking about all sorts of different things like disaster response. Let's say there's a data breach for an international company, public relations, something like that. So we're going to have you on again to talk about all that. I was curious though, what's on the horizon? I mean, are we going to see any integrations with Lessonly or Coursera? So what's on the horizon for Simulus?
So great question, right? So, I would consider the fact that we've been in this space for a number of years now. I wouldn't say we're experts. There's nobody who's an expert in AI at this stage. It's changing so rapidly, but I would say we're far ahead away of some of these companies that are coming out on a daily basis, monthly basis. So we're always looking for ways to leverage partners to tie into different automation methods. So we've got hooks into mortgage companies, for instance, where perfect example is and this is a great way to automate and provide personalized experiences. When you fill out, when you're looking for a mortgage, you'll go to a site and you'll say, okay, I'll fill out my application, and you submit, and then you wait and find out what it is. And maybe you might get a letter back that just says, hey, congratulations, you've been approved, sort of thing. Click here to talk to somebody. But what if you fill out that application and it gets routed, gets approved, and it automatically through the API can leverage Andrew Rosenblum's is the loan originator. It pulls his digital twin. It puts in the specific numbers that you're approved for, your interest rate that you're qualified for, and all of the other government regulatory compliance legalese that has to get construed to the client that says, hey, this is a temporary approval until you actually commit. You're not actually you're conditionally approved at this point. And they have to go through this. That's laborious, time consuming. And in this case, it's all automated, right? Mm-hmm. So now, as soon as you get that approval letter, instead of getting a letter, you're getting a letter to click to a link that takes them to Andrew Rosenblum, giving them a play-by-play of exactly what it is they're doing, and saying, I look forward to speaking to you further. And click here and let's set up a call to discuss live.
You can use this at Merrill Lynch.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! Wow, that's unbelievable. Okay, what? I would like to get back to that at a certain point. However, I know that our listeners, they're mostly forward-thinking executives in the product and technology space. And given everything that you've said, all the strategic and forward-thinking ways that you've addressed problems with companies, what I'm curious about is our listeners want to know how to implement the right strategies and how to put in place the right technologies to keep them competitive in the future. So what advice could you give them when AI is so dynamic that you would say there aren't even experts in it right now? What advice would you give those executives to make sure they're making the right decisions, it's future-proof, and they're good strategic technology decisions?
Well, if it's as it relates to AI, right, here's the deal with AI. It's here. You have to embrace it. And if you're not, you're going to fall behind. And there's a whole number of companies and books to talk about failed companies. And, I always go back to, if you're not innovating, you're falling behind, and you're lagging, and you're not providing the infinite mindset for your business and demonstrating resilience. And a great example of that is Joe Antioco. Andrew, do you know who Joe Antioco is?
No, I don't.
How about Reed Hastings?
No, I don't.
So
don't ask me more that I don't know about. I mean, this is
so Joe Antioco. Well, I'll tell you about. You know who Netflix is, right? Everyone knows Netflix. Reed Hastings, right. CEO, founder of Netflix. Joe Antioco was the CEO of Blockbuster Video. Reed Hastings went to Blockbuster Video way back in 99 or something like that, and said, "Hey, for $50 million, you can get the streaming service that we've now built."
Seriously?
And Joe, go read it. Joe Antioco.
Oh my goodness!
No, people want to come to the stores. there's one Blockbuster store located globally, and Netflix is what, almost $1 trillion market cap business at this point, right? So that is the definition of not innovating.
Yeah.
And being nervous about leveraging new capabilities and technology. And that right there is, to me, Circuit City is another one, right? There's a ton of businesses over the years. GE is a shell of what it used to be because it didn't innovate in the right manner. And so AI is here. And so the idea that it's here, it's through the research. AI has the potential to multiply enterprise productivity and innovation to a level that we can't comprehend. But it's only as valuable as the humans that are interacting and leveraging it and reasoning and helping streamline it. ChatGTP has been revolutionary, but if you just went and outputted whatever ChatGTP gets you, you'd still have inferior situation. But how do you leverage it in the right manner? You leverage it for some of the tactical things that you need, and then the human comes in and makes it more their tone, voice, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the same thing with generative AI today. And so as an organization, if you're not investigating artificial intelligence as a tool, and you're going to fall behind. And given the pace of it, it's really time to start onboarding some. I would venture to say, to finish that thought, it's time to start to embrace evaluating it and where it can fit in your organization, how to leverage it and how to manage it effectively. Because if you're not, your competitors will, and they'll come up with ways to do so. And to come back to what I was going to say is I would be surprised if they actually don't have a new C-level executive, right? So they create C-level executives from time to time. They used to have a vice president of sales, vice president of marketing, and then became the CRO. They used to have, the CIO, and then they had the CIO and the CTO, because they have different. There's just so much that goes into it. I'd be surprised if they don't have some type of chief artificial intelligence officer in the future, and that's my opinion. But it's so prevalent at this stage in the business world, and the explosion of what it can accomplish from an organizational perspective. You have to start to leverage that, and that goes for any other technology, right? It's if you're not thinking of innovating, you're not moving forward. And, there's just too many businesses and too many examples of companies that have failed in the past to innovate, and they're no longer around.
Now, I think Blockbuster is a really interesting example. I was listening to a business professor who did this lecture series, and on Blockbuster, he was saying they really couldn't go after the same customer as Netflix because of their model of like, we've got our locations in strip malls next to eateries and things like that. And then mom, at the time they could say soccer moms were our ideal customer. All of these things were really built in, like late fees and things like that. What I'm curious about is, do you think Blockbuster could have migrated to a brick and click model?
Yes.
Or you think so?
Yes. I'll give you another example. A great example is, I mentioned the e-commerce space, and I was there in the heyday of it, and yet I was there at the infancy and the heyday. And I will tell you, I worked with a ton of retailers, Target, Ralph Lauren, you name it, that had Walmart. All of these companies had a team that was brick and mortar, and then they had their e-commerce group. And they would fight over MBOs and KPIs associated with each, right? Everybody who ran the brick and mortar business, they wanted everybody to come into the store. Mm-hmm. And then they'd be like, oh, well, then they'd fight against those that wanted everybody to buy online. I'm like, come on. at the end of the day, this is the challenge we have. This is another challenge is too many people, and this goes beyond business, but too many of our cultures are filled with people working really to protect their own interest or their position before the interests of the people they're supposed to be serving. And that's a perfect example. I can tell you it was crazy how many times we had to go and sell to the same company. They have the same interest in selling product, and yet they would fight over how they could control their little fiefdom. And at the end of the day, it wasn't good for the consumer. It was frustrating, and it provided a poor experience, because if I bought something online and I couldn't return it in the store, how is that right? Like that happened, I don't know how many times. That was online, you can't return it here. I'm like, seriously, the same company, right? Like that's a horrible customer experience. And so a horrible customer experience resulted in that. And then that was really the advent of CX, and everyone started talking about customer experience, and I can go back 10 years and say customer experience was the big buzzword, and everybody wanted to talk about customer experience because everybody will pay more for a better service or product. And that was kind of what really drove the change that was necessary 12, 15 years ago, when we were having these discussions around not creating a more strategic scenario in an organization to think bigger versus working in these specific fiefdoms to protect their own interests.
Was it Telephone or GE that kind of insulated certain innovative parts of their business in order to make sure they weren't going to be affected by the legacy product lines? Something like that. But I've heard that can be very effective, kind of insulating them. But I'm actually curious, and this is kind of on it's kind of an off topic, but I just think it's interesting. To me, it seems like Redbox put the stake in Blockbuster's heart. Because they said if we want to do the brick thing, we can do it much better. Do you think, and again, it's kind of off topic, but do you think Blockbuster would have had a better time reducing their store footprints and just putting a block box, a Blockbuster box in front of those Thai food joints in the strip malls?
So I go back to one of the comments I made earlier, is that there's decisions made at the highest levels that a lot of people don't have the understanding. And so I can't answer that question. Yeah, I can give you my opinion, is that they should have looked at it and said, how do we shift or pivot a certain portion of our business to evaluate the opportunity and innovate, right? So I can't say that Blockbuster, a perfect example is General Motors versus Tesla, right? General Motors, Ford, they're all trying to get into EV, and they've been selling automobiles for 100 years. And why is Tesla just blown up overnight, or Rivian for that matter? Some of these other organizations that have come out of the woodwork selling EVs and things of that nature, is because they don't have the baggage, and they don't have the footprint, the infrastructure, and the overhead that a General Motors had. They could design it from the start in a new way. So I can't answer the question if Blockbuster could, but I would say that if you're not thinking, if you're insulating yourself and you're not trying to pivot and evolve and mature and innovate your business in some form or fashion, then you will eventually reach a point of capitulation, and as a result, your business will suffer tremendously, and you'll be surpassed by competition. So, there's another example of a current scenario today, right? You look at Tesla. Tesla's been around for 10 years now, and General Motors has been around for 100 years, and Tesla has a higher market cap than GM. So, so I couldn't tell you from a Blockbuster perspective, but they surely didn't try to do anything, or when they did, it was way too late, right? So, right. And a good example, and here's another short-sighted way of thinking. They love the late fees.
Exactly. They were making something like $200 million a year just without the late fees. And their department that was like, we're the late fee department. We can't get rid of that. We're getting rid of our jobs.
Exactly. And so I talked to a friend of mine who works for a large global organization today that does, I don't want to give it away, but they help distribute products globally. And it's I would say it's somewhat of a commoditized business. And we're talking about their go-to-market and how he's trying to shift. And he's the head of sales and marketing. And he was talking about another company they give them one bill that has all of their fees for their entire product suite that they're leveraging. And then this company gives them a whole a book of bills. Mm-hmm. And these large multi-conglomerate companies actually have to hire somebody just to be able to facilitate that relationship. And I said, why wouldn't you start to give them one item, one full, one price? Make it easy, one price for everything. And like, well, because we love our fees and we get fees for this and we get fees for this and we get fees for this. And he is struggling to get that shift in the mindset of the team to be able to innovate. And there's another example of companies today that if you're not looking to innovate and learn from others, you'll fall behind.
Now, let me ask you actually, on the other side of innovating towards, let's say, the brick model, which is a little less innovative, a little less glamorous. I just had an idea. What about if they had been able to use AI for usage-based pricing? Like how late it is, like how do you think that would have worked out? Now I'm just curious, Fred. Now I just want to pick your brain.
So, I mean, again, I'm not as familiar with AI for pricing mechanisms, but evaluate it. I mean, there's a lot of smart people in these organizations, and create a tiger team or somebody to go through it and determine what the impact of leveraging AI would mean to their business from an automation and improvement. I mean, at some point, people aren't typically buying technology just to buy technology. They're buying it to improve their business. Mm-hmm. And you have to evaluate. And even today, I was in a CIO meeting, probably about 6 weeks ago, maybe 2 months now. And a lot of these CIOs and CTOs were very hesitant to explore AI. They were just because security challenges, security issues. And they were just like, it seemed like they were overly concerned about security versus evaluating the impact from a business perspective. Let's be real. At this point, security in the global economy. I mean, how many days a week do we get mailings that said, "Hey, your data was compromised"?
Right, exactly.
Like, every day I get one vendor like AT&T or Xfinity or whoever it is you've got, like their data is compromised, and it's every day.
That's also what is your risk reward calculation to make. You know what the impact of cybersecurity will be, at least from a risk mitigation perspective, depending on where you draw the numbers from. But if you're trying to calculate like forward-looking synergies or something like that, that's much more difficult to evaluate.
I think, again, the number one, there's two. I think the two most important things in publicly traded and even private companies. Number one is shareholder value and growth, right? And number two is risk, security. Let's not bring our business down for some inane reason. But again, it goes back to, if you're not evaluating certain technologies and innovations because of concerns over something, then you're not looking to innovate. You've got the blind spots. You got those blinders I was talking about at the beginning on.
You and I have to get together again and talk about competitive strategy and stuff, because I now want to pick your brain about Trader Joe's and why they're success. I'm going to ask you all sorts of things, but
$5 flowers.
Is that it? I heard it was. My mom would always go there and get the $2 chuck, But was that there?
5 hour. I mean, they make no bones about it. I'm not a big user of Trader Joe's, but I know my wife is, and but again, they serve a market. They bring people in for $2 chuck and cheap flowers that are great, right? And then they have stuff that not everybody has. So
right.
But then there's Whole Foods on the flip side. Whole Foods will charge you. You can't go in there without spending the mortgage payment for your groceries.
Yeah.
But they serve a different market. You have to know. I mean, again, it goes back to the strategy overall: is who's your audience and how are you engaging with them, and what's your vision for it, and a lot goes into go to market and. But again, where's their innovation? How are they going to innovate? Who's going to take over? Like Amazon continues to innovate, and we get there's a reason why they're hugely successful. Now they're in the prescription drugs and things of that nature, right? And so I mean, you can order prescription drugs from Amazon now. I mean, pretty soon they're going to have every possible product that you want within 2 days. I mean, think about that now. That's another thing, right? Innovation. How many companies that we know of today look at and say, we're not going to do 2-day shipping, or we're going to use USPS to ship because it's going to save us money. And we're so ingrained now to think that I'm not going to order from this company directly. I'll go through Amazon because I can get it in 2 days and I have free returns and all that.
Yeah.
Eventually that'll change, right? I think Amazon's going to start charging $1 or something like that for returns or whatever it is, and they'll make a huge.
You think so?
Yeah, they've already made that announcement, I believe.
Really?
That it's coming. But again, companies are looking at it saying, oh, we can't do that. Well, no, you can do that. Figure out how you do it.
Well, they're also tastemakers. So when I think about it, actually, there was a return option that was, pay $2, but you have to have your own box or something like that. So when I think about it, actually, if they start to introduce these paid return options or necessities, then that to me will normalize it. What I'm curious about, would you be open to coming on again and just having a rap session about competitive strategies, things like that, so I can ask you why Southwest Airlines was so great, that sort of thing. Would you want to do that sometime?
Customer experience.
Okay.
Absolutely, right? I mean, of course I would. I think you're a remarkable leader, and I think this show is a great opportunity for people to learn from others, and again, have that growth mindset and talk about important and critical topics. I know that what you do for Beachfront is incredibly important for your clients, helping them think outside the box and come up with ways to help innovate and drive success. So I'm happy to be a part of it. And just let me know when another good time is for you, and I'm happy to come back on the show. We can talk about why is Chick-fil-A so successful, and they're only open 6 days a week.
That's a very good point.
And yet I haven't stepped foot in a McDonald's or a Burger King in years, but I'll go. I was at Chick-fil-A twice in the last week. Why? Right? Consistency and quality.
Why is my question. I mean, I genuinely wonder why.
Consistency and quality of service, right? It's like you feel good going into a Chick-fil-A. You have no idea what you're getting in a McDonald's.
I actually met a guy who was, I was walking my dog. I met a guy who was a regional trainer, manager, something like that for several Chick-fil-A's. And he was telling me about how difficult, this is so funny. He was telling me about how difficult it was to implement this new policy, which was very important to the company. It's where all of them, after taking their order, taking somebody's order, they would say something like, pleasure to serve you today, something like that. But that's
pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my daughter worked there, so I know the talk track, and I've got a couple of friends who are operators. But I mean, a great case in point is when they asked Truett Cathy many years ago, what if you opened up on Sundays? how much additional business could you get? And he goes, probably a tremendous amount, but that would pale in comparison to how much business we would lose by breaking our values and our core principles.
No, absolutely. Well, Fred, this has been just fascinating. You're obviously an invaluable resource for the organizations you serve. You're a big thinker. So for our listeners who are looking to innovate and drive success, go to market, where can they find out more about you?
Well, I've got a website, www.bigwheelperformance.com. You can find me on LinkedIn at Fred Solar, and or you can find Simulus website at Simulus, www.simulus.ai. Or just hit me up if you have any questions. I'm happy to network and grow and learn. And again, I don't know everything, so I love to learn from people and continue to add value to this world.
Absolutely. Well, once again, thanks so much for coming on, Fred. We're going to put links to all the things that you talked about in the show notes, and hopefully we'll get a chance to get together again soon.
I look forward to it, Andrew, and I look forward to future episodes of this with people who are a lot smarter than I am. So bring them on.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We covered a lot of ground today, but let's recap a couple notable points. Fred has a wide-ranging perspective on both the products he's bringing to market as well as the market itself. So know how to position your products competitively in order to find success. Also, building high-performance organizations and bringing tech products to market, it requires a strategic blend of training and partnerships. So know when you've found a trusted lieutenant and know when to seek outside help. Fred manages to build and lead teams that really deliver outsized results, and he brings technology to market better than the competition with whatever organization he works with. So if you want to learn more about Fred or the work he's doing with Simulus AI, or if you want to reach out for some robust consulting, check out the links in the show note below so you know where to find him. That's all for now. Until next time, I'm Andrew Rosenblum. You're listening to the Winners in Business podcast, sponsored by Beachfront Custom Development and Impact Business Marketing. See you next time.